Hi everybody, my name is Justin. I'm the creator of OSnap, an iOS application for making time-lapse and stop-motion photography projects on your iPhone or iPad. Today we're going to be looking at the camera screen in OSnap and the different settings and adjustments that you can make. Before going further, I just want to point out that this tutorial is specific to OSnap Pro 2, so if you have a different version of the app, i.e. OSnap or OSnap Pro, you're going to need to go find the other camera screen tutorial. So now I'm going to navigate to the camera screen. So you can see that I've set up a little scene that is similar to something you might set up if you were doing a stop motion project in OSnap. So we're going to start at the top of the camera screen, okay? I'm just going to swipe down and that reveals the top control bar. So starting at the upper left, I'm just going to tap that button, and that is the lock orientation button. What that does is if you're in portrait and the orientation is locked and you rotate the device to landscape, it will stay in portrait and vice versa. Unlocked, if you rotate the device, it will switch orientations. The next button is the flash button. You've got flash on, you've got flash auto, you've got torch. And the next button over here is the shooting resolution and the aspect ratio. If I tap on it, you can see all the different options that are available to me. Those vary with the device. And this is an iPhone 14 Pro, and you can see those are the options. Currently we're shooting 1080p. The next button is the capture format. So you've got JPEG, TIFF, I think that's how you pronounce that, TIFF, RAW, and ProRAW. RAW and ProRAW are grayed out right now. The reason being that on most devices, you can only capture RAW and ProRAW if you are in max photo resolution. So see, now I've changed it. RAW and ProRAW are available, but we're just gonna stay in 1080p for now, okay? So that's the top control bar. If I swipe up, the top left button is simply the back button. It will just take you back to the project summary screen. And the top right button swaps the camera, so if you're using the back camera, it'll swap to the front and vice versa. Now the other thing I'd like to point out here is that just like with the regular iPhone camera, you can tap anywhere on the screen, okay? And it's going to optimize for that point of interest. All right, so I could tap here and you can see the focus changes, and it will also change the exposure. Once you tap, you can also drag. It will optimize for that particular scene. And just like with the regular iPhone camera, you can pinch to zoom, okay? So you can see I'm just zooming in on that little figure there. Now, looking at the lower left, this is the exposure value adjustment, okay? So you can bias the exposure value one way or the other. You can see as I move it, you can bias it to be very bright, or you can bias it to be darker, whatever you like. I'm just gonna unlock that. On the lower right, you're gonna see the swap lens button, all right? So I can swap lenses. There I've got 3x, okay? Here's my ultra wide, and back to the 1x. Okay, now the other thing I'd like to point out is just below those two buttons we just looked at is the information bar. If you look to the bottom right, you can see that it says total 1. What that indicates is that there's a total of 1 image that has been captured in the project. Now, if I tap the capture button, now it's captured another image. You can see that in the current capture session, I have captured 1 image and the total is 2 images. And this information bar changes what it displays based on whatever activity you are doing. Okay, the next thing I'd like to show you is the manual camera settings. So if I swipe up here, you can see that I've got shutter, ISO, focus, and white balance. Now, if I double tap any of these, it will lock them. And it's worth pointing out that if you're doing a time lapse or if you're doing a stop motion, generally speaking, you probably want to lock all of these. Otherwise, you can end up with unintended lighting changes and flicker, focus changes, etc. in the middle of your time lapse. So unless you have something very specific that you're doing, you generally want to lock these. In addition to double tapping in order to lock them, I can also tap them once, each of those settings, and it will bring up a slider for me. So here you can see I am adjusting focus. The yellow lock icon over here indicates that it has locked. Once I've changed it, I'm just gonna unlock it by tapping it. You can see I can do the same thing with white balance. And I can do the same thing with ISO or the shutter speed. So now I'm just gonna swipe down in order to hide those settings, and we're just gonna start looking at the very bottom toolbar. In the lower left, you're going to see a thumbnail, and that thumbnail indicates the last photo that was taken. If I tap it, it will actually bring up a playback screen. I'm not going to do anything with that right now. The next icon over, the one that sort of looks like a sideways Wi-Fi signal, it's supposed to indicate a sound wave, and that reveals the hands-free shooting mode. So there's two choices that you have with that. You can either set it up so that if you make any loud sounds, it will snap a photo, or you can issue voice commands to OSnap in order to tell it when to take a photo and do a couple of other things. The benefit of that is that if you're shooting a stop motion, you don't want to move the camera because it might ruin your stop motion. So if you use that, you can snap photos without touching the camera. The center button, of course, is the capture button. If I tap it, it will capture a photo, and a feature that is available in OSnap Pro 2, if I hold it down, you can see that it will do a photo burst. The next button over, the little timer button, this is the button that you're going to use, generally speaking, if you want to do time lapse. I'm not going to go deep into this right now, but there's an array of settings that you can adjust before you start the timer in order to do a time lapse. And the very last button on the bottom right is the target overlays button. And here you've got a series of overlays that you can use in order to align your shots. Again, I'll cover these in another tutorial. And that concludes this tutorial for the camera screen. Thank you everybody for watching. Thanks everyone for watching. If you'd like to see more tutorials, leave us your thoughts in the comments, or you can email us at osnap@osnapphotoapp.com.